If there's one thing that you want to know is how to create content in a way that's going to give you the ability to make it more shareable, to make it more viral, to make it so people actually get the value from what they're looking at, not just for the like sake of it, but more so you can increase the trust in the mind of your ideal audience. Because if you can't do that, what you're going to find is you're going to constantly be one, being inconsistent with content, which is going to hurt your brand. And two, you're going to be putting out content that your ideal audience don't connect with. So it's not going, so it's not just making it shareable just from the space of, oh, I want to go viral, because viral content is not just going to, a lot of people will see it, but how many of those people are your ideal client? And what I've learned is that a lot of those people won't be an ideal client. But with that being said, you still want to be able to create good content. So today we're going to be focused on one, how to make AI write emotional, shareable type content for your audience, specifically the simple prompts that I use to create content in less than an hour a week. So I'm going to share with you my favorite types of prompts to use when it comes to AI, and then any kind of other insights that's going to allow you to be able to save time while also creating the types of content that you want for your audience. So that is what we're going to focus on today. And what really made me think about this is, we've been able to attract over 588 coaching clients, throughout me being in this business, and we help thousands of people just in general, each and every year, and I'm always doing trainings. I'm doing live events. I'm traveling and doing things. I'm always doing webinars and, challenges and different things of that nature. And what I've noticed is one of the biggest challenges for folks who are really trying to consistently get clients and make money is they're not building their authority enough. And it's because they're not posting content consistently enough. And the biggest challenge that I always hear is, man, I don't have the time to do it. I don't know what to write. So it's always time. And it's always, I don't know what to do and I don't know what to write. So those are the two things that we're tackling today. And that was one of my challenges. Early on, I was trying to figure out, how do I put the content together and what could I do? So, I had to really think of the ideas myself. And so what I would do is I would just be talking about anything, but me talking about anything it made me attract any kind of clientele, which is what you don't want to do. So then I started figuring it out. Okay, all right. So if I'm really going to help, I'm not just going to help anybody, but I want to help business owners. So then I started working with more business owners, and I started putting out more business content, and I started attracting business owners. But I was finding that I was getting some people results, but I really wasn't getting them the type of results that I could be getting them. And then I said, you know what? Let me start working with coaches and speakers, right? So then I started putting out that type of content. And once I started putting out the type of content that my audience wanted, then that's when things started happening for me. But I had to really think about, okay, well, what are the different types and the derivatives of each and every one of the steps that I'm helping people with? So I help our clients create what we call a 12-step coaching program. And anybody can do this. So right now, if you don't have a program, or even if you have a program, anybody can do this. You put together 12 steps of what is going to help your ideal client get closer to the goal that you promise them that they're going to get, whatever your experience is in. And then what you do is you create the content based on that, right? You create all types of content. So for every one step that you can help somebody with, literally there's 100 different topics you can focus on, and there's 100 different perspectives you can focus on, right? But one of the hardest challenges is, okay, well, how many different ways I can talk about this? Think about this. I've been doing content for the last, I've been in this industry since 2015. And for many years, most of the years, I focused on basically creating a coaching program. I basically focused on content. I basically focused on lead generation, and I basically focused on sales, right? And then I'll throw mindset in there as well, right? So you got to figure out what yours are. But here's the good part. Good part is we have AI now. So with that gives you the ability to make things happen much faster without you having to be creative. So let's go through the first one. So how to make AI write more emotionally shareable content. So here's the thing, right? You want to have the base idea. AI, like a Chat GPT or Gemini or whatever platform that you use, is going to do the heavy lifting. But you have to do some type of work, and you have to do some type of effort. Today was going to make what you do more successful is going to be around how you write the prompts and create the prompts, which we're going to go into. But you got to have the base level understanding. So when you have a base level understanding of your audience, now you can say, okay, I want to teach them this topic, but I want them to feel a certain type of way. So anything that people will share, anything that people will save, anything that people will like is going to be based off of a feeling. That feeling is what makes people do things. So there's a few different ways you can help people with the feeling. And I'm going to tell you what my favorite way is. Let's just start with that. My favorite way is telling stories. It's one of the best ways in order to get people to feel something. When you tell a story, you ever notice when somebody's telling a story, like you locked in, you want to hear what they're saying. You're like, okay, I really want to understand, like, how does this work? And so your goal should be to tell as many stories as possible. Now you might say, man, I don't know what kind of stories I have around this. So there's a couple of things you could do. One, just think of the most closely related story you have towards whatever the topic is at hand. With the most, and then guess what? You can use AI to make it into a better story. So for example, I have one of our clients who, Destiny. I tell her story a lot, but this is just key. Destiny, she was going on a 2-week vacation out of the country, and we're running her ads for our ads agency. And so she's like, okay, so what's going to happen with the ads? I'm getting ready to go out of the country. And, so what's going to happen with the ads? I said, don't worry about it. I said, our agency is going to handle it for you, and just go out of the country and come back and just call the leads that we gave you. Now, mind you, up until this point, she was only getting about 5 to 6 leads every 2 weeks. Now, you in our space, you should understand that leads and booking appointments is most important. Like, you got to have people to talk to. So like the leads is like step 1 to making sales. So you got to have people to talk to. You have the best product in the world, but you got to have that. So, but she was only getting 5 to 6, every 2 weeks. She went on a 2-week vacation, came back to 336 leads. We got her 336 leads in 14 days. Right. So imagine just converting 10% of that, what that could do for your business. You might have $1,000 program, $5,000 program, $10,000 program. Imagine what that could do if you convert just 10% of that, which is what, 30? Even if you had $1,000 program and you convert 30, what would that do for your business? Right. So I mentioned that stories. One, see how locked in you were when I tell the story. Now, imagine if you say, well, I don't have stories like that. Or you know what, I can't think of, it's hard for some people to actually put together a good story. So this is where you can use AI. So what you would do is you would give them the basic points of the story. Typically is like problem solution, but I'm going to give you one of my favorite prompts. Okay. I'm going to give you one of my favorite prompts right here. And it comes from, I felt like I spelled this wrong. But I spelled this wrong, but just stay with me. So I'm gonna give you one of my favorite prompts. If you want to tell a story, I want you to leverage Russell Brunson's process. He calls it the Epiphany Bridge story. The Epiphany Bridge story, which is really, I guess, the Epiphany Bridge, maybe framework might be a better. I don't even know what's the last part of it, but let's just say the Epiphany Bridge framework. So Russell Brunson is very, very great at telling stories, and one of the best marketers. I mean, he that is the owner and the CEO of ClickFunnels, right? Which most people know ClickFunnels, but they might not even know Russell Brunson is the founder of that. But if you type in AI that, turn this story, turn this into an Epiphany Bridge story or Epiphany Bridge framework, what's going to happen is you're going to have, now they're going to create the story in a way that is going to be compelling, because this process outlines where you were at prior to you getting any results. It talks about the pain, it talks about the journey, it talks about the desire, what it looks like during the journey, and then it also talks about what the results you got afterwards, which is what every classic story has, right? It has where you started. It has some type of journey. Think about any movies that you love. There's a beginning. It kind of creates context to what's happening in the story or the movie. And then you have, now you have the journey, right? They call it the hero's 2 journeys, which is externally what you want and internally what you want. Externally, I want to make $10,000 a month. Internally, I want happiness. I want freedom. I want to travel with my family. I want to spend time with my spouse. I don't want to be, working this 9 to 5 forever. I want a retirement, right? That's why they call it 2 journeys, the hero's 2 journeys, right? You have the external things that you want, but you have the internal things that you want. We all have this, by the way, when we're striving towards a goal. So we need to talk about this. This is what makes it more interesting, your content more interesting, when you're able to tell stories, but you're able to tell stories in this hero's 2 journeys format. But instead of typing heroes 2 journeys and internal, external, if you just tell the prompt, the Epiphany Bridge framework, it's going to know that Russell Brunson is to use that format. So it's one of the favorite things I like to use when I'm telling a story is I'll give some basic prompts to that. So what I'll say is, I'll say, okay, talk about the story. And I got better with this over time, but even if I'm writing an email, if I'm doing something like that, then I'll give the basics of the story, right? And I'll say, okay, what was, because everybody likes before and after. So you want to say, okay, what it was like before, and then at least say what it was like after at a minimum. And then if there's any pain that you faced on that journey or throughout that story, you have to mention the pain, right? If you mention the pain, people are going to feel more connected to it. If you talk about the consequences, people will feel more connected. If you talk about the consequences, people will feel more connected. So you got to talk about the pain, but you got to do it in a way that is going to be visual, which is another aspect to it, right? So I would say visual and details. Okay. Sometimes I don't always say details because that'll make the story longer. But the more visuals, the more detail that you give, that's also gonna make your content more interesting. So you want to be able to do that. All right. Another thing I like to use, and some of these things are simple, but I just noticed people don't really use it. So another thing I like to use is, and I'll put this in AI, metaphors and similes. Metaphors and similes. Use these. So, obviously a metaphor is without using like or as, right? So, you start using those metaphors. It was I had as much energy as a light bulb after that, or something struck me, this idea struck me. I was gonna say like lightning, but that's actually a simile, right? But you know the difference between metaphors and similes, just without using like or as, and then simile is using the word like or as, right? So, but start using more of these ideas. It was weighing heavy on my heart. Metaphor, right? So I was stretched thin like a you know what I'm saying, like an old t-shirt. I don't know, you tell me, right? But you come up with the ideas. But what's so great is when you start using these as prompts, what's going to happen is they're going to list it. So I'll give you another idea is that sometimes I don't even just say write a metaphor or simile for this. I'll say list 5, and it gives me options. It'll give me options. So I'll say, okay, you know what? So I'll have the story, and then I'll say, you know what? I want to throw a simile in there somewhere, or a metaphor. I'll say, list 5 metaphors to add to the story. Boom, and then it'll list metaphors to add to the story. List 5 similes to add to the story, and then I'll take one that I resonate with, or one that I think will be a good one, and then I'll include that in the story. Or you can just say whatever one you like. Then you can write another prompt right after it, and then say, okay, add point bullet number 2 to the story, and then it'll recreate the story, and then you can add a bullet to it. You see what I'm saying? So then now you can take that content, and you could use that content in email. You could take that content and literally just tell the story in a video. You don't have to like read it like a teleprompter, but and just tell a story in a video. So that gives you the ability to really start having more content that you can share. You could use that as the descriptions. You could use that if you follow me on Facebook. You'll see, like, I'll do I'll usually do these long form posts throughout the week. Follow me on Facebook. You'll see I'll do my long form posts, right? So I have the core ideas and I'll have the core story. But if you want to make it look smooth, if you want to make it look interesting, if you want to actually hit the elements of human psychology to make somebody say, wow, this is good. Wow, let me share this. Wow, let me like this. Wow, let me comment on this. Wow, you know what? I really like the way that Sharon put this together. I think I really have a connection with this person. That gives you the ability to now have authority and credibility in the mind of your audience, which is very key, because most people think that content is to get clients. And it's going to sound counterintuitive. Like, what do you mean? I thought it was to get clients. No, content is to build trust and authority in the mind of your ideal clientele. And if they're not connecting with your content, or they're not finding it valuable, it's going to be hard to build that authority. So when you do have a challenge, when you do have a webinar, when you do have a lead magnet, when you do have a conversation in DM, or you do see them at an event or see them somewhere, then if you've done a good job with that, then it makes it a lot easier to have or initiate those conversations. That's when you get the people responding back. But when you don't do a good job with the content and it's not really connecting with the problems, with the pain, they're not really they don't feel nothing from your content, then that's what's going to make it harder for you to be able to just build the business, especially if people are following you, because you're not connecting. And that's one of the biggest challenges I'm seeing with folks today in our coaches, is like they're talking, but they're not necessarily making it connect with their ideal clients. Does that make sense? So you really want to focus on that. All right, so that's just a couple. Those are like really two of my favorites. I'll give you a couple quick other ones. What I like to do is I like to say at a third grade reading level. I like also saying at a third grade reading level. Coach T, why would you want to make it at a third grade reading level? I want to look like an academic. I want to look like I'm smart. I don't want them to think that I'm not intelligent. Well, newsflash. Most people in the world read at a third grade reading level. So if you're talking above your ideal audience, they're going to be confused. And a confused mind never buys. A confused mind never takes action. So it's important to make sure that you are actually speaking on a level that most people could understand. Now, but what I hear people say is, but what about the people? Well, I'm not talking to them. What about the other people that can understand it? That's who I want. Well, let me tell you this, is that one, you're going to make less money. If you're talking to less people, you're just going to make less money. If only 10% of the people could actually understand what you're actually trying to say, because you want to use all of this jargon, you want to use all of these industry or niche specific terms, because whatever niche you focus on, it's very easy to start talking in that language. And then you start talking in that language, you start saying all of these terms people don't know, and they're going to keep scrolling. They're not going to watch. They're not going to comment. And then you're going to be wondering why nobody is responding to me when I'm trying to have a conversation with them. It's because you're not connecting your language to them, because you're not speaking at their language, right? I mean, I sometimes I'll catch my son, if I'm talking to him about certain things, and I notice that I'll say certain words that he may not understand, and he'll just be kind of looking at me like this, or maybe he'll ask me about it, and then I'll see the confusion on his face, and then he'll say, because I have a toddler, so I see the confusion on his face, and then I'll break it down. He'll, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, and then now he actually can take action on the things that I'm saying. Right? You don't want to be, if somebody says something to you in a foreign language that you don't understand, what can you do with that information? You can't do nothing with the information if it's a foreign language. You're like, oh, okay. You just act like you know, but you can't do nothing with it. You don't feel no type of way about it. You can't take action on it. You can do nothing with it. That's what it's like when you're using terms people don't understand. But when you say at a third grade reading level, and I'll also say, you can add that, which goes along right with that, is I'll say turn this into layman's terms. layman's terms, right? Saying, very kind of similar thing, just like the average person can really understand what you're trying to say. So these are things that you want to take. So these are some of the favorite prompts that I like to use. Sometimes I'll like, now this is just specific to me, but sometimes I like to say, hey, turn this into like millennial language or millennial lingo. So sometimes, so part of my audience is I like millennials. I got audiences that's older, I got audiences that's younger, but sometimes I just like to use that. So these are just some of the things that really help when it comes to making shareable content. That if you take away anything, start telling more stories. But most people are bad at storytelling. So use stories, use similes, use metaphors. Dumb it down. When I say dumb it down, it's not a negative thing. Just lower down the language to third grade or fourth grade reading level. Say to turn it into layman's terms. If you just did that, more people will connect with your content, more people will watch your content, more people will share your content, more people would just they would take, more importantly, they're going to take away something from it. It's going to increase the goodwill that you have with your audience and the credibility and authority that you have with your audience. So those are some of the things you want to do. Now, how are you using this in order to really be able to save time, especially with your topics? Because a lot of people say, I don't have the time to do this. So one, you always give it the basic, and then you tell it what you wanted to do. Are you creating an Instagram post? Tell it to write it as an Instagram post. Are you creating an email? Give the basics of it and say, write this as an email. And then you can add some of these prompts to make it even better. So you want to start using these things. And typically what I'll do is I'll say, okay, if I want to write some content, one of the easiest things that you can do is create a, say, okay, 7 days in a week. Why don't you just give it 7 topics and then just literally have it write out an email for every one of those topics, or have you write out a, just write out a post. You might say, write 7 Facebook posts based on these 7 topics. Boom. And then now you have 7 topics. You have 7 Facebook posts that you could put out. Here's the thing though. Once you have those 7 topics that are on your subject, guess what you can do? Now you can literally use that and write it and talk about it you could do a YouTube video on that. Which, by the way, you could script out a YouTube video if you want to go to that level. But usually, I'll just do like a blueprint, but you could script it out. But you could do a YouTube video on that. You could post it on different platforms, post it on LinkedIn, post it on Instagram, talk about it in your stories, do a Zoom or do a webinar on it. So these are the different, go live talking about it. These are the different things that you can do once you actually have it as a written post. So one of my strategies is I do the same thing, but I just do it in email. But if you have an email list, you can do it that way. Or if you don't have an email list, just do it out as a written post. But how I like to do it personally is I'll have a topic, and then I'll write it out as an email, and then I'll take that and then I'll use that. I might tweak a couple little things. Sometimes I might keep it the same, and then I'll put it as a Facebook post. And then I'll take that, and then I might talk about it going live. And then I'll take that, and then I might do it as a YouTube video or YouTube training. And then I'll take that, and I'll do it as a clip on Instagram and put it on TikTok. So I'm literally leveraging the same information, but I'm just doing it in different formats. So that allows me to be able to literally spend 30 minutes to an hour creating the content, creating all of the posts, and then I can just use that and keep talking about the same thing. And don't think your audience is going to get tired of it, because they're not, because they haven't seen the email. They haven't seen the face. Just because you put it on Facebook and then you talked about it as a clip on TikTok, or you talked about it as a clip on Instagram, most people are not even going to see that. And even if they do, they might still like it, or they might just scroll past it. How many times have you seen somebody post something similar? And by the way, even if it was in the same format, like even if you posted the same video, people either like it or scroll past it. But most of the time, even if somebody liked the post, let's say it was written on Facebook, you could literally just talk about it as a 1-minute video on Instagram, and people will still like it, and they'll feel like it's 2 completely separate things, although it's basically the same content. The idea behind this is you're telling stories. The idea behind it is your people are getting value from it, and it's saving you time because you don't have to keep thinking about new topics. Write it out, use the prompts, and then talk about it in different places in different formats. And if you do that, you're going to be able to create more content more consistently. It's going to be shareable, and it's going to save you time so you don't have to think about new content. So these are the things that you really want to be learning. We have a strategy that we use, that's called the cornerstone content method, and this is our way of how we create content throughout the week. So then now we have our strategy on how we create content, and then now you just literally leverage AI on top of that. It's like what you're going to be posting each and every day of the week, what format you're going to be posting it in. And once you know your 12 topics, which we talked about in terms of your coaching, you know your 12 topics of what people, you know the outcome, and then you know the types of formats that you like, whether it's like, going live or green screen, or you figure out the format you like the most. And then literally at that point, it's just about going into any of these AI platforms and then creating the post, and then talking about it in different places. And if you did that, you would save time. Your audience will love you. You won't be stressed out, because if I could post the same thing 5 times, but just in different formats, we winning at that, and I'm still providing value consistently. All right, so that is the idea of how you want to be able to make your content shareable, and how you can take it to the level where it's consistent and it's valuable, and it's something that people really enjoy in their life. All right, so make sure you go ahead and do that. If this is something that is interesting to you, I talk about topics like this all the time inside of our school community. So if you want access to our coaching, where we do our free mentorship, right? Just go ahead and put coach me in the comments. Go ahead and drop coach me in the comments, and then what I'll do is I'll give you access to our free community on a platform called School, where we do training. We drop free resources for our members. All right, so if that's interesting to you, go ahead and put coach me in the comments. Other than that, continue to be great. Slow motion is better than no motion. Let's work.